Hi, I'm Chris Walker with Rio Products, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of our how-to series. Today's episode is all about how to choose the right trout fly line for your application. And when I'm choosing a trout fly line, the first thing I think of is taper. Now, tapers differ in a couple of different ways. The first and probably most important is weight. Now, there's a weight standard for different size fly lines that's set up by the American Fly Fishing Trade Association, or AFTA for short. And the way this standard works is they weigh the first 30 feet of a fly line, excluding any level tip. So if that piece of line weighs 140 grains, that's right on spec for a 5-weight fly line. If it weighs 120 grains, it's a 4-weight. If it weighs 160 grains, it's a 6-weight. So at least in trout sizes, those lines differ by about 20 grains between each one. Now, just for a frame of reference, I've got a scale here, and I can show you what a business card weighs. So this is a standard business card. I'll put it on my scale, and it weighs about 21.1 grains. So that gives you a really good basis to understand how small the difference is between these sizes. One business card is the difference between a 5-weight and a 6-weight line. Just for fun, we'll put a 9-foot 4X tapered leader on here as well. And that one weighs 9.2 grains. So just by changing your leader, you can change these weight specs as well. Anyway, the reason I mention weight specs is trout fly lines differ quite a bit in that 30-foot weight. Certain lines are right on the standard, which is usually about as light as lines get. Other lines are up to a full-size heavy in some of our most popular trout tapers. So that actually changes the dynamics of how the line casts quite a bit. The second way that tapers differ is in the distribution of weight from kind of the rear portion of the head all the way through the front taper. And the rule of thumb to remember is that the closer the weight is to the fly, the more powerfully that line will turn over. So if you have more weight close to the fly, you can throw a bigger fly. Sometimes you can throw a longer leader, or you can throw a multiple fly rig with a little bit more ease. If you have less weight close to that fly, the line is going to turn over more delicately and give you a more gentle presentation. So that's a little bit better for situations where you're trying to throw maybe a small dry fly and present very, very delicately to the fish. Now, Rio's general floating tapers come in 2 different series. The first of which is the Elite series. And this one is really set apart by the Connect Core Plus core material. That's a core that stretches about 30% less than a standard fly line's core. And that's really useful in a lot of situations because any manipulation you do of your line or fly with the rod is transferred more directly down your line because there's less stretch. So for example, if you're going to mend or you're going to pick up and cast again, or even more importantly, set the hook, you have 30% less stretch between you and the fly, and consequently you and the fish. So that's a really nice feature of that Elite series. The other series that our tapers come in is the Premier series. This is very similar to Elite series, except that it does not have that Connect Core Plus feature. So this is a standard fly line core. It stretches a little bit more. Otherwise, both series have our slick cast technology, which creates the slickest and most durable fly line coating on the market. One more difference is the Elite series has 3 colors in our Surefire color scheme. And all that means is that there's a color change at 20 feet, and then another color change kind of at the back of the head of your fly line. So the first color change is helpful for gauging how much line you have on the water and how far you're casting. Second color change is really useful for gauging when it's time to shoot line rather than continuing to carry longer and longer lengths. The Premier series, on the other hand, has only dual tone, so you don't have that first color change at 20 feet, but you still have a color change at the back of the head. Now we have 4 different general trout tapers in our floating lines, and we'll limit this discussion to lines that I think are good for a variety of applications. So a line that you can put on a reel, take out and fish, dry flies, nymphs, and streamers all in the same day. So the first and the most widely applicable is the Rio Gold. Now this is a great all-around taper. It'll throw everything from a size 22 dry fly up to about a size 2 streamer, something like that. I really like this taper because it's got a relatively short front taper, and then the heaviest part of the head occurs just behind that front taper. It's also got a long extended back taper behind that, which allows you to carry lots and lots of line, present a dry fly at distance. So that's the first of our tapers. It's probably the most general purpose taper of all of them and one of my favorites. Second one we'll talk about is the Rio Perception. This is also a good all-around line. This one is a half size heavy according to our AFTA standard, so about 10 grains above the actual AFTA standard. And that makes it nice for loading a rod at kind of closer range. It's a little bit easier to get your cast going and bend the rod on a short cast. So that's a great line for slightly smaller water. You can't carry quite as much line as you can with a Rio Gold, but on shorter range casts, it's a great all-around taper. Next after that is the Rio Grande, and this one is actually a full AFTA size heavy. Now you might be wondering, why would you want to put a 6-weight line on your 5-weight rod? And there's a couple of reasons for that. As I said, the more weight you have close to the fly, the more powerfully it turns over. So let's imagine you're throwing a really big wind-resistant fly, like a stone fly, maybe it's a hopper, or maybe it could even be an indicator rig, something with a lot of weight on the end of your line. In those cases, you need a little bit more mass in the head of your fly line to turn the rig over and carry that extra weight. And that's where the Rio Grande really shines. It's also a great line if you have an especially fast rod and you need a little bit more weight to load it and really feel the rod kind of respond to the weight of the line. So for those few reasons, the Grande can be a really great choice. The last taper I'll mention, and the one I like the absolute best, is the technical Trout. And this one is right on the AFTA standard, so it's actually the lightest of the 4 tapers we're discussing today. And the reason I like this line is because if I'm fishing it, it means I'm fishing dry flies. It's really the perfect line for carrying a small dry fly on a relatively long leader and turning it over with a lot of delicacy and finesse. So if you've got technical fish feeding on small bugs, they're in still water, that's the perfect line for that application. It's got a nice long front taper, which contributes to that delicate presentation. Then it has a relatively long body section behind that, followed by a long back taper. So it's actually the longest head of any of the lines we're discussing today. And for that reason, you can carry quite a bit of line and be very precise with your dry fly presentations. So those are the 4 tapers and the 2 series that our general purpose floating trout lines come in. Hopefully you found this video useful and it'll allow you to choose the right fly line for your application and lead to more success on the water. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Rio's How-To series, and thanks for watching.